Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about the top 10 teamwork spells from the Dark Archive, since that just came out. There's not much else to say, so let's get right into it. Starting off at number 10, I've gone with Stalag Time. This 5th level transmutation spell is available to arcane and occult casters. It takes 2 actions to cast and targets 120-foot burst area within 120 feet. The spell lasts for 1 minute. Any creature beginning their turn in the area must make a will saving throw. On a success or critical success, nothing happens. However, on a failed saving throw, the target is slowed 1 for that turn. On a critical failure, the target is slowed 2 for that turn. This spell is great because it limits what multiple opponents can do. You can even combine it with a wall spell to force your opponents to stay in the area. And even if the enemies know that the area is there, they're probably going to try to move around it, which wastes actions. However, the reason this spell is so far down this list is because it also affects allies in the area. Meaning, if allies start their turn in this area, they are also slowed unless they make their will save. It's fine if your party is full of ranged attackers, or if the enemy is too far away for melee attackers to get to. You can also put it in an area where it only affects enemies. However, in most cases, melee attackers are going to have to move through that area or around it, which affects them just as much as it would affect enemies. Next up at number 9 is Morass of Ages. This is a 4th level transmutation spell that is also available to the arcane and occult traditions. It takes 2 actions to cast and has a 5-foot emanation area. The spell can be sustained for up to 1 minute. Any creature in the emanation or who starts their turn in the emanation must make a fortitude saving throw. Every time you sustain the spell, you can increase the emanation by 5 feet to a maximum of 60 feet. On a successful saving throw, squares in the emanation are difficult terrain for the creature. If they fail on the saving throw, then they are also slowed 1 if they start their turn in the emanation. On a critical failure, the target is also restrained. They can remove the restrained condition by attempting an escape check against your spell DC. The reason that this spell is slightly higher on this list than the previous spell is because of that critical failure effect. A foe that is in difficult terrain, slowed, and restrained is huge. However, this spell has the same problem as the last spell. If your allies are in the area, they're affected too. Also, until you get this spell up to a high enough area, it's not that great for spellcast. Now, if you can get this spell on something like a champion, that would be amazing. But in most cases, you're going to have to be at least level 12 before you can get this spell on a martial character, since it is a 4th level spell. At number 8, we have Falling Sky. This 8th level evocation spell is available to arcane and occult casters. Please note this spell does have the incapacitation traits. It takes 2 actions to cast and has a 120-foot range. The area of this spell is a 60-foot tall, 30-foot radius cylinder. All flying creatures in the area fall and take double the fall damage. This happens even if the spell's area is entirely in air and they never actually hit the ground. Creatures in the area that are on the ground, including flying enemies that were forced to the ground, must make a fortitude saving throw. On a success, that creature is knocked prone. On a failure, the target is also stunned too. On a critical failure on their fortitude save, the target is knocked prone and is stunned for 1 full round. This spell is great for helping out martial characters that can't really deal with flying enemies. Yes, all martials can use a ranged weapon. However, if they're built around melee, they would much rather have a flying enemy on the ground instead of up in the air, especially if they're a monk or an animal instinct barbarian. So this spell forces them to the ground. You can even use this spell on enemies that can't fly to make them prone, which of course makes them flat-footed to everyone. Also, the fact that you can make them stunned makes it even better. Take them out of the fight for a turn, why not? The reason that this spell is so far down the list is because the fact that it only lasts one round is both a detriment and a help. Because it only lasts one round, you're not going to affect your allies when you use this spell. However, it only lasts one round, which means you can only affect your enemies for that round. Don't get me wrong, it's a good spell, but there are better teamwork spells on this list. At number 7, we have Temporal Twin. This 3rd level conjuration spell is available to arcane and occult casters. For 2 actions, you create a duplicate of a target ally within 30 feet. The duplicate appears in any unoccupied space within 30 feet of you. The duplicate must take a basic single action that the target took since the end of your last turn, such as making a strike. The target ally must spend a reaction to create the duplicate. If the target ally does not have a reaction to spend, Temporal Twin fails. However, the ally makes any decisions other than the fact that it must be a basic single action. Also, the ally rolls for the repeated action. Using this spell requires remembering what the ally did, and if you don't, Temporal Twin might fail. Once an ally has been a target of Temporal Twin, it is immune for 1 day. This spell is fantastic for martial characters. You can give any martial character flanking for a round if you know where to put it. Especially good for rogues since they can essentially sneak attack with themselves. Because the duplicate is an exact copy of the original target, any special abilities that the target has would apply to the duplicate as well. Granted, the duplicate can only take a basic action, so something like sneak attack that applies on a flat-footed target when they make a strike would apply to the duplicate as well as the original rogue. But this spell's effects are very limited, and it only lasts until the end of your next turn. At number 6, we have Implement of Destruction. This 4th level enchantment spell is available to divine and occult spellcasters. Yeah, you thought I was always gonna do arcane and occult spells, huh? But no, this one is available to divine casters as well as occult casters. This spell takes 2 actions to cast and has a range of 30 feet. It targets 1 enemy and 1 weapon that is either unattended or wielded by you or an ally. It lasts for 1 minute, and the targeted enemy must make a will saving throw. On a successful saving throw, the targeted weapon deals an extra 2d6 mental damage the first time it hits that enemy during the spell's duration. On a failed saving throw, the targeted weapon deals 2d6 persistent mental damage. Also, as long as it is taking that persistent damage, it is doomed 1. On a critical failure on the will save, the weapon deals 4d6 persistent mental damage, and the target is doomed 1. Honestly, a lot of enemies have low will saves. In addition, giving the fighter extra damage is always good, even if it is non-lethal damage. However, doomed isn't the best condition in the game, because in all honesty, you're just gonna knock the foe unconscious and then coup de grace them after the fight. Honestly, the only way that doomed is any good is if the enemy has a cleric that can bring people back with heal spells. Because even if they have resurrection spells, they're probably going to have to wait until after the combat is over to use them, and you'll probably kill them by then. And at number 5, we have Quicken Time. This 5th level transmutation spell is available to arcane and occult casters. This spell creates a 20-foot burst area within 120 feet that lasts for 1 minute. Any creature that begins this turn in the area is quickened, but can only use the extra action to stride or strike. However, creatures that are in the area are concealed to those outside it, and vice versa. The reason this spell is here is because it has upsides and downsides. If you're in the area, you can make more attacks, but they're less accurate. But at the same time, enemies' attacks are less accurate against you. You can also use this extra action to stride, but you're probably striding out of the area, which means you're not going to gain the benefits of this spell next turn. Don't get me wrong, Quickened is a good condition, but because this spell lowers your accuracy, there's a better version of this spell later on this list. For number 4, I've gone with Suspended Retribution. This level 6 divination spell is available to divine and occult casters. When you cast this spell, choose one creature within 60 feet and one of the following triggers. The creature takes more than one move action on its turn. The creature makes more than one strike during its turn. The creature casts a spell. The creature uses one specific skill that you name, or the creature uses a specific ability that you name. For the next minute, if the creature uses the triggering action, then it takes 70 mental damage with a basic reflex save. The target instinctively knows which action will trigger this spell. It can also spend 3 interact actions to remove the effect of this spell. These actions do not have to be consecutive. After the creature spends the actions, the spell ends. A creature under this spell has a few options, but all of them are good for our team. And since this spell lasts for 1 minute, anything but the third option will all have to make multiple times. Number 1, use the triggering action and take the damage. Don't use the triggering action and take whatever we've named off the table. And number 3, spend 3 interact actions to end the spell. They either waste their entire turn doing this, or they spend 1 or more actions doing it over multiple rounds. This is great to use against enemies that you don't want to use a specific action. However, this does not stop them from actually using the ability. It just means they take damage if they do so. And that's why this spell is further down on this list. At number 3, we've got Focusing Hum. Focusing Hum is interesting because it's considered a divination and an enchantment spell. It's a level 2 spell that is available to divine and occult casters. It has an area of a 15-foot emanation around you, and you can sustain it for up to 1 minute. This spell is situational, but when it does work, it's very good. For creatures in the area, the DC in order to cast a spell while stupefied is reduced by 2. Also, confused creatures in the area don't attack anyone, including themselves, and instead just speak incoherently. However, when this spell is active, you take a -2 penalty on stealth checks to hide and sneak. Stupefied is the worst condition for a spellcaster to be under. This makes it a little more bearable. Also, confusion, while rare, can be extremely self-destructive to a party, unless you are under the effects of this spell, of course. However, both these conditions are pretty rare, so you're not going to use this spell very often, which is why it's lower on this list. For the runner-up on this list, we've got Summon Erie. Its 8th level incarnate spell is available to arcane and occult casters. The creature takes up the space of a medium creature and has a speed and fly speed of 60 feet. When you cast this spell, choose whether it summons a Fate or a Fortune Erie. Choose the Fate version of this spell. Then upon arrival, while within 30 feet of the Erie, if you or any of your allies rolled less than a 10 on an attack roll, perception check, skill check, or saving throw, you get a 10 instead. When it departs at the end of your next turn, then all enemies within 30 feet of the Erie must make a will saving throw. If a creature fails its save, then until the end of its next turn, anytime it rolls higher than a 10 on an attack roll, perception check, skill check, or saving throw, it gets a 10 instead. If you choose the Fortune version of this spell, then when it arrives, you and all of your allies, while within a 30-foot emanation of the Erie, can roll twice and take the better result on all damage rolls, perception checks, and saving throws. When it departs, the opposite is true for your enemies. Enemies within a 30-foot emanation of the Erie must make a will saving throw. Any creatures that fail on their saving throw must roll twice and take the lower results on any damage rolls, perception checks, or saving throws until the end of their next turn. These are all great debuffs. And the only reason this spell isn't number 1 is because the number 1 spell is very versatile. And the number 1 spot goes to Loose Time's Arrow. This 2nd level transmutation spell, that's right, you heard me, you can cast this spell at level 3. Is available to arcane, occult, and primal casters. For 2 actions, you can target up to 6 creatures within 30 feet. Those creatures are quickened until the end of your next turn, but they can only use the extra action to step or stride. This spell essentially allows you to quicken your entire party for 1 round with basically no downsides. Yes, you cannot strike with the extra action. However, just being able to move with an extra action has huge applications. Got an archer in the back that's really giving the party trouble? Now your martial character can get it right up to him and deal with him, especially if said martial has sudden charge. Is an enemy giving your fellow spellcaster some trouble? Now that spellcaster can step to avoid the attack of opportunity, stride, and then still cast a 2-action spell. Or if the enemy doesn't have attack of opportunity, they can stride and cast a summon spell to protect themselves, all in 1 turn. And the list goes on. Just moving around has such an effect on the game that this spell is insane, especially for a 2nd level spell. Yes, it's only 1 action, but that could be the difference between winning and losing a fight. And that's going to do it for this video. But if you think my order is off on these spells, or if you just think there are better spells in Dark Archive, let me know down in the comments. And until next time, remember, teamwork is vital.